Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. As many of you know, I like to interview fellow former Jehovah's Witnesses. Today is a special occasion for me because one of the sweetest things about escaping from the Jehovah's Witness organization is being able to reconnect with those who knew you as a Jehovah's Witness because they were Jehovah's Witnesses themselves. I haven't had that much chance to do that because not that many people I know have reconnected with me, but one is reconnecting with me today. Welcome to the Lloyd Evans channel, Luke Stevenson.
Hello, Lloyd. Hello, viewers. Good to be here. Finally on the channel.
Finally. Yeah, we have been in touch for a while now, but now you've agreed to do an interview, and you know your face should be familiar to many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses for reasons we will go into later. But I don't want to divulge too much personal information. But are you currently in the Macclesfield area?
I am currently in the Macclesfield area, yes. I was born in Bolton, but I've moved up in the world into Cheshire now, so now I think I'm quite posh, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, Cheshire is sort of viewed as posh in Manchester, and I went to Macclesfield College for 2 years. So I know Macclesfield very well, yeah. So you're properly joining me from my old stomping grounds, it has to be said, and I'm very excited about that. So, yeah, I guess we'll reminisce as this conversation proceeds. But let's kick off.
Nice.
Let's kick off with you telling us how you got involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, or how Jehovah's Witnesses became a part of your life.
Yeah. Okay. So I was born into a family of witnesses. I was a third generation witness. My mum and dad both grew up as witnesses, so it was basically all my family, as far back as I can remember, has ever known. Both grandparents on both sides became witnesses when my parents were either before they were born or just as they were sort of very, very young. So it's basically been a all of life process for mum and dad, and it certainly was for the first 30 years of my life as well.
Okay. And how seriously did you take it? Because I vaguely, we knew each other. I think it's safe to say we didn't know each other that well.
That's true, yes.
But
to be honest with you, Lloyd, and I'll get to this now, I would have been giving you a wide berth because you were one of those people that were taking it very seriously, and I couldn't, and studying was never something that I was particularly interested in, but I was very, very much a witness. Like I say, growing up, it was all I'd ever known. We were definitely a family of witnesses. Mum taught us kids at home because she thought that was sort of the right thing to do. Everything was, the truth was prioritised. I say the truth, I know we may find that term offensive now, but I use it colloquially as the witnesses do. But yeah, everything was orientated around the religion. So my entire upbringing, I say I was educated at home. Basically, my education was going through the Watchtower article for the Sunday and preparing for the meetings. And it was sort of felt by mum that was education enough for us. We were learning to read, we were learning to write, we were learning to prepare items for the meetings. We were, socialising with people within the religion. We went on to pioneer. So she thought all the bases were covered with that kind of education. Maybe that wasn't the case with hindsight, but that was her feeling on the situation, and she would rather us be at home, being brought up, taking in the spiritual food, than in a worldly environment, being influenced by other people. So that was the way she saw it.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because I was just about to try and find a diplomatic way of saying that, you know, like I say, I don't have that many memories with you.
No.
But I guess my attitude would have been, as someone who, like you say, was kind of heavily into it, that I should only really be hanging out with those who were kind of at the epicenter of the organization. And I guess I wasn't aware of you falling within that, you know, so I... Is that diplomatic enough?
I don't know if you recall this, but when I first reached out to you on Facebook, I actually said to you, I prefer you as an ex-witness than being as a witness because you were sort of...
Yeah. But seriously, I look back now and cringe, but that was my attitude. I was a snob. I was a snob who very much looked down on anyone who I didn't know for a fact was either a pioneer or close to becoming a pioneer. So
well, I was a pioneer, in fairness.
Oh, you were?
I was a pioneer, I went to pioneer school. What I would say was that from my perspective, I could tell that you were the kind of person who was taking it seriously. And I would have felt, not that I wasn't taking it seriously, don't get me wrong, I believed it was the truth. I was the youngest of 4 boys. You're probably more familiar with some of my older brothers, I don't know. But I was sort of just following in their wake, if you like. So they all left education and pioneered. And so I was sort of towing the line and following, as I say, in their wake. But I don't feel like I had a grasp of the deeper spiritual matters that others, as I'm looking around, I thought, oh, well, they seem to be getting it, you know, so I won't talk to them, that'll go over my head. But that's not to say that I didn't take it seriously. I was certainly not. All of my friends, like you, were witnesses, you know, definitely we felt like they were properly in the religion. I didn't have any worldly association or anything. We were very much sort of confined within the religion, definitely.
So whereas I probably had a kind of superiority complex as a young JW, you probably had an inferiority complex.
That's what I would say, yes. And I think my dad did as well, to be honest. He was serving as an elder, but he would often come home to meetings and go, oh, I don't know if I should be an elder. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And I think that's what the religion does to you, because you look around and think other people are understanding this and it's making sense to them. Now it makes way more sense to me, all of the teachings and all of the stuff that they're coming out with, because from the other side, it's like, oh, I now understand why, you know, they don't allow witnesses to speak to people who have left the religion. All of the different policies and everything makes sense when you see through why they're implementing those stances and positions that they take. But it didn't make sense to me within the religion, and I don't think it did to my dad, to be honest with you.
Do you think that the fact that the religion didn't make sense to you played some part in you eventually getting disfellowshipped?
Possibly, yes, because when I did eventually become disfellowshipped, I wasn't overcome with a feeling of, oh no, I'm not going to survive Armageddon now, or I'm in trouble with Jehovah, or it sort of didn't particularly, none of those feelings resonated with me. I was quite prepared to let it go, I think. Although I did still believe on some level that it was the truth, because I hadn't really taken to it hook, line and sinker as a witness. I didn't take as much to let go of it all either.
Yeah. Because I was reproved, I think probably around the time that you were disfellowshipped, actually. I was reproved in 2009. And I can remember saying to the elders that because I really kind of gave it some thought when it happened. It was a very, very traumatic period for me, you know, as a newlywed, to be having marital problems. And it's, you know, felt like the whole world was collapsing. And I devoted quite a bit of time to kind of introspection and thinking, how did I get here and where am I going? And one kind of conclusion I reached was that at least part of the reason why it had happened is because I wasn't fearing Jehovah. I wasn't taking the organization as seriously as I should, because I had all of these suppressed doubts that I'd been holding on to and burying for years and years. And, they weren't going anywhere. They were just sitting there in the background,
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether there was a similar thing at play with you, whereby, when you're just doing it to make others happy, it's easier to, I guess it's always going to be easier to do something wrong, to put a foot wrong in some way,
So I wouldn't say I had been burying my doubts. As soon as I had any doubts, I think my outlook would have been, because I was never into the studying thing, it would be a case of, well, Dad and Mum believe it, more intelligent people than me believe it, and you would look at these people that you've grown up seeing on the platform, and they seem to be able to explain how they view it. So it's not necessarily resonating with me, but I'll sort of leave it to them. It's just not really something that I would be interested in, you know what I mean? But I had been told that it was so important that we need to sort of make it the main focus of our life. So I'm still doing everything that I need to be doing, and I wasn't doing anything that I shouldn't be doing all of my growing up years until I did. But for the most part, I certainly wasn't, you know what I mean? And I was avoiding bad associations, and I was not going into clubs and things like that, and not doing things that potentially I would have sort of naturally wanted to do, because I thought, yes, it's definitely the truth. But I never felt like I could explain it to other people. So like, I was pioneering, but I was hoping no one asked me too many deep questions, because I wouldn't have felt very confident about explaining the beliefs and the teachings. But it never really cropped up, because people don't ask questions, do they? So they were quite happy with, we're just showing you and your neighbours the latest editions of the Watch Down and Wait magazines. This one's talking about whatever, and I would read the title and say, would you be interested in having a read if I left them with you? And that presentation has, held me in good stead for 30 years.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier about homeschooling.
Yes.
You were homeschooled, and how did that come about? What was the decision-making process behind that? And was it religiously motivated in any way?
Oh, definitely, yes. So, as I've said, I was the youngest of 4 boys, and then we had my sister. When my eldest brother was coming up to starting school age, my mum read an article in, I think, A Good Housekeeping magazine or something, about somebody who had taken their children out of school and they decided to homeschool them. Now, I believe that sort of my mum was the first one to do this, because she thought, well, I would rather not put my children through school, but for the reasons of not wanting them to be associating with worldly people and not being instructed by worldly people about false teachings and things like that. So I definitely know that she didn't get it from any other witnesses. So I do believe that she was sort of the first one, at least in our location, maybe in England, to sort of teach the kids at home, as from a witness's perspective. I think she was the first to do that, really.
And do you feel, so it was religiously motivated? She didn't want you to be taught anything that contradicted Jehovah's Witness teachings, and she was afraid of bad association at school. Do you feel as though this decision has set you back at all?
Well, it's probably thanks to that I'm working as a window cleaner still. I do feel like we didn't have much of an education. I don't want to do my mum any disservice, but she isn't a science teacher. She hated history herself, so she didn't insist that we did history. She loves teaching kids to read. So she taught us all to read when we were very young, and then we would do like Bible readings on the platform from very, very young ages. Do you know what I mean? But she sort of taught us what she wanted to teach us. It wasn't important that we learnt about things that she didn't think would be helpful as witnesses. Do you know what I mean? It was all geared towards that, really. So yes, I do feel like I've missed out on some sort of education. There's a lot that I don't know, but I do know how to clean a window because I was taught that by my dad, who was also a window cleaner, along with my granddad. So, you know, it is what it is, I suppose. I can't bemoan too much my lack of education because, like I say, it is what it is, and I'm sort of doing okay.
Yeah, we're dealt the hand that we're dealt. I'm sure there'll be a few chuckles because, you know, let's face it, it's not just a UK thing. You know, the whole window cleaning thing, I think, is part and parcel of Jehovah's Witness culture in multiple countries, isn't it?
Absolutely,
And I always think of the IT crowd episode. It's a noble profession. I don't know whether you've seen that episode.
I've not, but
yeah, it's a really funny sitcom.
Window cleaning is a noble profession. That's not all I do, by the way. So that's okay. That's the only way I can come to terms with the fact that I am still working as a window cleaner is that I also support myself with singing work, which I do enjoy. So
you do.
Maybe a school education wouldn't have necessarily helped me anymore with regards to my singing work, and I'm happy with that. So I don't worry too much about.
I was going to ask you about the singing because if I have one memory of you, of like a crystal memory in my mind of us encountering each other, it's in a studio, in a recording studio somewhere in North Manchester, because I was getting an album recorded of my songs, and I was I was benefiting from the help of someone who was good with audio and music and mixing recordings, who you were also working with. And I think we passed each other on certain days or certain evenings when I'd finished recording and you were just starting, or vice versa. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's right,
yeah. And so I wanted to ask you about that because obviously you're a far, far better singer than I am. And we'll get to some proof of this shortly. But it was weird. It was a weird conflict in me of, I really want to do music. I'm not so sure how I'm going to do music, but it's in me. There's this music in me, and I want to express it somehow. And my way of doing it was to write an album, which I did. And, I wrote various songs and what have you. And because I knew different musicians who were Jehovah's Witnesses, I was able to, do it as a band effort kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I always felt like guilty about pursuing something.
I know what you mean.
That was always that was inevitably going to push me deeper into Satan's system of things. Did you ever have that conflict?
I did have that conflict. Fortunately, right, my eldest brother, his passion was playing football, and he would have done that 24/7 if he could. In fact, a lot of my youth was spent being dragged around the football field by my older brothers. So I was no good at football because that was their passion. So I couldn't compete with them, but I was playing alongside them because I was the only. It was just us brothers playing. Because my mum didn't like football and she thought that was like a worldly atmosphere to be in, my eldest brother was never allowed to go and watch Bolton Wanderers, our local team, and he would have loved to have just gone to watch the football matches, but he wasn't ever allowed to do that. And all my growing up, it was like, please mum, can I go and watch the football? But he wasn't allowed to do that until he was married and had left home. I don't know how old he was. But fortunately, she took a different view of music, which happened to be what my passion was. I think she just thought it was more creative and more artistic than kicking a football around the field. So music was not as frowned upon as his passion being football. But I still felt like the feelings that, like you're speaking about, we don't want to be putting too much into this or spending too much time working with music or playing music or whatever, because, as you say, it could draw us away from the truth, couldn't it? And especially if it got out of hand and we became famous or whatever. If we had any success with that,
seriously, I mean, why else? I mean, do you seriously set out to be an average standard musician who very few people know about? You know, if you're gonna go down that path, you're gonna aim as high as you possibly can, aren't you? You know.
Yes. But I think it was also felt by mum and dad or whatever that music is actually something that could be used by the society as well. You know, you could end up writing a Kingdom Melody, couldn't you? You couldn't
an
play
original song on JW Broadcasting, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah. In fact, if I'd still been knocking around as a witness, I would like to think that I was on one of their music videos.
You would have been, I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't frowned upon as much as the football thing. So I sort of was allowed to do that. What happened, I believe that the person you were talking about that was helping you out with the recording, that would have been my best friend growing up. So around about the time from like school leaving age of 16, for a good long while, well, he was my best friend. So what we would I would be pioneering during the day. He would come and meet us and we'd go out on the ministry, and then he'd come back to mine and we'd have some tea, and then we'd sing songs and play guitars and write songs and stuff like that of an evening. So Mum didn't particularly look down unfavourably on that, because if we hadn't been doing that, we'd have just been watching telly or whatever. She didn't really see an issue with it. So that's how I sort of went down the music route and got away with it.
Is he still a JW, your friend who was helping me?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, interesting. I think his appetite for my album project wasn't the same towards the end as it was towards the beginning. I think he...
well, I wouldn't read anything into that, because that's how it is with music projects. At the point where we were working together, well, I'll be honest with you, it's been my ambition to get an album together. I've just, like last year, put out 2 songs. That's as successful as I've got in sort of...
Well, you say that. You have sung on national television.
This is true.
And if Tibor is gracious...
working with our mutual friend.
If Tibor is gracious, we will show evidence of this.
Would you dance if I asked you to dance? Would you run and never look back? Or would you cry if you saw me crying? Or would you save my soul tonight? Would you tremble if I touched your lips? Or would you laugh? Now please tell me this. Would you die for the one you love? Well, hold me in your arms tonight.
So that was you on X Factor, and it seems you had a fan in Nicole Scherzinger. So that's something, isn't it?
What can I say? It was a pleasant experience.
Well, put it this way.
She's not even bought one of my singles though, so I'm a bit offended about that.
If Simon wasn't interested in your singing, I shudder to think what his reaction to my singing would have been. But that was actually a really good performance. And did it feel like when you did that? Well, first of all, I'm fascinated to know, were you a JW when you did that?
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay. And so did you get any pushback for doing that?
Oh, just a little bit. Because...
Okay, go on.
So obviously, I happened to be watching that episode.
Ah, okay.
And he rang the elders in my congregation, and I subsequently was removed as a servant.
Oh.
I was a ministerial servant at the time that was filmed.
Ah, yeah. So that you could say there were repercussions.
Yes, you could say there were repercussions, but I didn't really see any problem with it because I was pretty much wearing the same clothes as I wore on the ministry that morning that I went to audition. I just took my tie off and went and auditioned and got it on telefilm.
So was it hurtful that they removed you as a servant for doing it, or did you kind of expect it? How did you feel?
Lloyd, it was a relief because I don't mind telling you that you and your viewers this. At the time that I went on the X Factor and I found fame, I was both serving as a ministerial servant within the congregation, but I'd also been having an affair for a year or so. So the fact that I got pulled up for being on the X Factor was, I felt, the lesser of the two evils. So if they're going to remove me for anything, it may as well be that.
It's a fair cop.
That was my feeling on it.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine.
It was a crazy time. It was a crazy, crazy time.
When you say affair, do you mean a relationship with a consenting adult?
I do, yes.
Because that's just a relationship, isn't it?
No, because I was married at the time.
Oh, you were married. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. And wow. Okay. And so
there was a lot going on at the time. I won't speak too much about my marriage within the religion because that would be unfair on my ex-wife.
Yeah.
And I treated her unfairly, and it wasn't a nice thing to do, and it's not a time that I'm proud of. I will say that. What I would say from now outside of the religion perspective, basically, when I got together with my ex-wife, I was 18, which is old enough to understand things and be in a relationship, but from having experiences with other people, from that perspective, I was a kid. You know what I mean? I'd never been to school, so I'd never had school playground girlfriends or relationships or anything like that. So basically, my marriage coming to an end, it's sort of, looking back on it now, it was like most people would look back on their school ground relationships coming to an end. You know what I mean? Their first girlfriend or their first relationship that they would remember. That coming to an end, it puts a different perspective on it, doesn't it? But I will home hands up and say that wasn't fair on my ex-wife at all, of course. But that's sort of how it happened, because I had no experience of relationships. I'd gone from, being just growing up as a witness, no girlfriends or anything, to being married, and that sort of didn't work. And that certainly wasn't helped by the fact that I was having an affair. So I do accept full responsibility for that. But the marital vows are the marital vows, yes. and people make marital vows whether they're Jehovah's Witnesses or not. Yeah. So it's important to recognize that, and I think it speaks a lot about you to kind of hold your hands up in that way. That said, like you say, you were incredibly under-equipped to be getting into like a lasting relationship. I mean, you say you met at 18. At what point did you get married? We actually had a very long courtship, so I think we were courting for 7 years.
Oh, okay.
I won't talk too much about that. But,
no, that's fine. Okay, yeah. Well, so was this what led to you getting disfellowshipped? This affair. And that would have been around about the same time as the X Factor appearance, would it?
Yes. Everything sort of came to a head. But at the time, I believed that the witnesses had the truth. I believed that going on the X Factor, I didn't take too much umbrage at the fact that they removed me as a servant for that. I was like, okay, fair enough. I hadn't seen it quite the way you have. but I could see where they were coming from with regards to that as well, you know what I mean? Because of the way I've been brought up. So fair enough. And the fact that I've been having an affair, I just felt like I was a naughty boy just a naughty boy. And so, but I still felt like they had the truth. So I was asked to go to a judicial committee. So I went for that because, like I say, I still believed that it was the truth and everything. They said, well, we're going to disfellowship you. Then my eldest brother was told that it was going to be happening. He was an elder. He came round and had a couple of studies with me, you know, trying to jolt me back into what I should be doing. He drove me round to go and visit Grandma and my auntie to let them know that I was going to be disfellowshipped, which was quite an emotional type of thing to be doing. It sort of felt like, I don't know, like reading a suicide letter to them, I suppose, but in face to face, you know what I mean? It was a very strange situation to be put in. But because I still felt like it was the truth at that point, I was like, okay, then if that's what I need to do, you know, and I was sort of thinking, my head's all over the place because my heart was still with the person that I've been having an affair with. So I've got a lot going on in my mind. The elders have just been getting on my case for going on the X Factor, that's the least of my worries. And now I'm going around to visit Grandma and my auntie to tell them that I'm going to be disfellowshipped, and I've got to sort of tell my brothers and things like that, and my dad. Because I still felt like it was the truth, I went to the meeting where my disfellowshipping was announced. That's like going to your own funeral, because a lot of my friends didn't know that I was being disfellowshipped. It all happened very, very quickly, do you know what I mean? And I sort of, whilst this is happening, judicial committee and, you know, being told that, yeah, you're going to be disfellowshipped, I was sort of keeping a low profile, but it happened very quickly. So we're talking about a couple of weeks, so I just kept a low profile for a couple of weeks, and then it's being announced like a week later or whatever. And I've got friends like running out the halls crying because they didn't see it coming, you know what I mean? Like I say, going back to what you were saying before, I was definitely considered by everyone else around me as a witness. They wouldn't have seen that coming, you know what I mean? You know, growing up, you see some people and it's like, oh well, and they'll get this fellowship, come back and get this fellowship again. It just seems to be part of the course for them. But for me and my friends, it was a shock and a big thing.
Yeah, and you say that there were people running out of the Kingdom Hall crying. You know, this is an experience I haven't had. So when I disassociated in Croatia, it was just a case of I attended my judicial committee kind of on behalf of me and Deanna. We both disassociated, and it was just a case of handing in our letters, and we didn't attend the meeting. So you were there in the Kingdom Hall when they announced Luke Stevenson is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
What was it like after the final prayer?
I don't think I think I had been advised to leave after the song, or
right.
I left when I was advised to leave. So basically,
so you weren't there when they were all mingling after the meeting.
Yeah, no. I'd been advised to go. Whatever point that was, I went. You know, I was doing what I'd been told was the best thing to do and the right thing to do. So I went at that point. So I didn't see any aftermath after that meeting. I don't know.
And were you kind of straight away plotting to get reinstated?
Sort of yes and no. It was a very confusing time, very, very stressful, because, as I've said, I wanted to be with my now wife. We had built up a strong relationship, you know. It was sort of the only thing keeping me there was the fact that I still believed it was the truth. So but I did still think it was the truth. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get around this or overcome this as an obstacle. I don't know if I'm strong enough to go back to the meetings and sort of forget about this person that I have a relationship with and that I love. I don't know how. I didn't know what the future was going to hold at that point. It was very stressful.
I can imagine. Did you feel like you might have to choose between your religion and the person you were in love with?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was not in two minds as to how my family would react to my disfellowshipping. Mum, I would say this for her, she will always do what she believes is right, very, very strongly. And I knew that from being very, very young, that Mum was not going to sort of ease off on anything. When I was very young, Mum unfortunately lost my I was the youngest of four boys. Then we had my sister. Then Mum was pregnant with another sister, and she lost that baby, and she was not in a good way herself, and she lost a lot of blood, and the doctors told her, if you don't have a blood transfusion, you are going to die. And they brought all the family in to say goodbye to Mum. I think they were trying to sort of impress on her, we're not messing around here. And she didn't accept a blood transfusion. So in my mind, she's going to do what she thinks is right, whatever the cost.
That must have been a very traumatic experience to go through as a child, to effectively be brought into a room and asked to say goodbye to your mother.
Yes, but I think I was sort of too young to fully understand what was going on, really, you know what I mean? But I also, I think it's human nature, but also children's nature to think that things will be all right. I don't think you sort of think, oh, well, Mum's going to die. And obviously, people wouldn't have said that to me as a child either. But that was the situation, that the doctors felt like she was going to die. And we would have been left without a mum. But she did actually survive. And I put that down, as a child, I put that down to, Jehovah's saved her type of thing. She's done what's right for Jehovah, and Jehovah's looked after her. And that thought in my head would have been built upon by the fact that Mum and Dad then went on the district convention to speak about the stance that they'd taken, because it was obviously a stressful time for them, but they had remained faithful to the witnesses, to Jehovah or whatever. So they were held up as an example. And so I didn't have an issue with that. Yeah, Mum's done what's right by Jehovah and she's survived. The only problem was that there was, around about the same time, a sister in another part of the country, very similar experience. She didn't survive. And that couple had children, and they'd been left without a mother. It was exactly the same, scenario. And in my sort of head, it was like, how come Mum survived and this other family's mum hasn't survived? It must be that Mum's more in the truth. She's more of a witness. She's more faithful than this other person was. You know what I mean? And Mum felt a connection with this other family, of course, because they had this shared experience with different outcome, but a shared experience. So she invited that family round to our house, and we had sort of a lovely fun day. Mum would arrange like hide and seek and different sort of games to keep these kids happy, you know what I mean? So we sort of had a bit of a party type of thing. Well, we didn't really have parties the rest of the time, so it was kind of a fun day. And I can't remember how many other children there were in this family, but sort of in the back of my mind, I was sort of thinking, this family might be slightly more worldly than us because their mum hasn't survived. Terrible logic, but also kind of the way we've been brought up to think, it sort of logically would follow that must be the case. You know what I mean?
Well, you're scrambling to come up with an explanation for the unexplainable, really, and how could Jehovah have saved your mother and allowed another mother to die? It's obviously a case of, you know, different bodies, different circumstances, slightly different medical situations, leading to different outcomes, and clearly the doctors felt that things were very bleak for your mother, but people do pull through in unlikely situations, and in the same situations sometimes they don't pull through. So wow, I can imagine that being incredibly difficult for you. Like you say, you're probably too young to process it all, but I'm sure it would have been playing in the back of your mind. And you also you seem to be suggesting that kind of level of belief, of, you know, trust in Jehovah would have informed your mother when it came to, do I shun my son or not?
Yes. So I was left in no doubt that Mum, when I was disfellowshipped, would not be having anything to do with me. And that has been the case. Definitely.
When did you last speak to her?
It was before I was disfellowshipped. She phoned me actually when she knew that I was going to be disfellowshipped, and she said, "You know that I'm not going to be speaking to you," and I said, "Yeah, and I know to expect that," and that was it.
And you've had absolutely no contact since then?
Me and my wife, we have had a baby boy. He's going to be 2 in December.
Congratulations.
She sent me a WhatsApp message. Oh, thank you. She sent me a WhatsApp message to say something like, but it was sort of directed at Oliver, our son. It sort of wasn't conversational. It was I can't remember what it was. It was something like, "I want to get something for the baby. Do you need a pram?" or something. It's something like that. But there was no. It wasn't a communication. I sing at care homes, and I happened to mention to one of the people that run the care home that I'm having a baby boy, and now every time I only go like once every 6 months or something. Every time I go, it's, "How's the little boy?" I've shown them pictures of Oliver, and this is from like a worldly person who's running a care home, has got a lot of other things to think about, but they've shown a lot more interest in my baby boy than his grandma has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's simply the stance that she's taking. She's not flinching and not budging on that.
He doesn't need a pram, he needs a grandmother, actually. Yeah. It's astonishing to think that in her mind, that's her way round the problem. Okay, I'm shunning Luke and his wife, and I'm not going to be able to see my grandson, but at least I can buy them a pram, and that will sort of paper over things. It's sort of, I don't know if it's worse than that, because she has been messaging my wife. I don't know how she got my wife's number. Maybe we messaged first, I don't know. But it was a case of, we would love to come and meet Oliver. But because of the situation, it would have to be when Luke isn't at home. What day suits you? I've had that, yeah.
And it's not because we don't love Luke, it's because we do. And I'll be honest with you, I've not responded, and I'm feeling bad for my lack of communication on my part. It's been around 10 years. And I don't actually know how to respond to that, because I could just say, well, that's not happening, and that's not because we don't love you, it's because we do, and just leave it at that. Or I could take it as an opportunity to sort of say something about it. And I don't know if anything that I do say would just be lost on them or whatever.
I would respond to it, and have responded, in fact, to that sort of suggestion from my father. And the response is, we come as a package, thank you. And
I've seen your video on
shunning. The shunning is your rule, not mine, and we're not going to normalize that kind of playground behavior in front of our child, if that's okay with you. So
So in her message to my wife, she says, I know this must seem strange. And that's it. It's not, I know this must seem strange, but here's the logical reasons and the reasoning that we've gone through to come to this position, even though it seems strange. There's no sort of hints towards any reasoning. It's just, this must seem strange. Okay, yeah, it does. But I sort of want to say to her, when you're saying it must seem strange, listen to that voice and listen to that thought, because yes, it does seem strange. And if you can't explain the reasons to my wife, who is a fully functioning adult, how are we to explain that to your stance to a 2-year-old? No, you can't come when daddy's around because grandma and grumpy don't speak to daddy.
We have to pretend that daddy's dead in front of grandma and granddad. Yeah.
So I can't. If that's their description of love, that's not something that I want to pass on to Oliver as being an accurate portrayal of how love should be shown. So it's not going to happen, but I don't know if I want to go into the details of why it's not going to happen in my response, or just go, right, well, there you go then.
Maybe you'll get an opportunity to respond in this video, because you never know, she might want to watch it.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
If that's the case, if they're watching this, just put down your reasons for not speaking to both me and the grandson. And when it makes sense to you, then get in touch with, and hopefully it might make sense to us, because at the moment it just doesn't, and we can't describe that behaviour as loving.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And obviously it's one thing to be disfellowshipped for whatever reason. There's any number of reasons why you can end up being disfellowshipped. It doesn't have to be having an affair. It could be something as simple as, smoking a cigarette or getting involved in smoking, or any number of rules that could be broken. But it's one thing to be disfellowshipped. It's another thing to actually wake up to the fact that you were being exploited by a cult. So how did you come to that realization?
Well, once I had, I think what helped was the fact that my relationship with my now wife was in a completely different town. So, as I know you've said, out of the situation and the surroundings that you've grown up in, within the same congregation and all the rest of it, once you're taken out of that and you're removed from it, it has a different influence on you, doesn't it? So, but I still believed it was the truth, and I started going to meetings in Macclesfield, and I even took my stepson to meetings, and I would give him answers and he would answer up and things like that, do you know what I mean? And so I had ideas that maybe I could ask someone to have a study with my wife, and we could all become witnesses and be back in the truth and things like that. But at the same time, I also allowed myself to see outside opinions and things like that. And I've not done any studying. I can't describe it as studying because I don't like reading or whatever. I can read, but I would listen to things like podcasts whilst I'm window cleaning and things like that. And I watched your videos, and I thought, that face looks familiar. And things started to make a lot more sense when you speak about the religion from the outside perspective, no longer part of it. It all makes sense. I actually enjoy the conversations. I'm enjoying this conversation a lot more than I've ever enjoyed book study on a Thursday night or any of the meetings. You know what I mean? Because it actually does make sense when you're talking about it and when other people are talking about it. And so it sort of quickly came unravelled because I allowed myself to listen to other opinions and other viewpoints. And like I say, it just makes much more sense, this side of it. And then I started listening to things like The Atheist Experience and watching YouTube shows like The Atheist Experience and Talkie and things like that. And then the whole God belief came unravelled as well. So I now consider myself very much an atheist, and it makes a lot more sense. The whole world makes a lot more sense with the perspective that I've got now.
If you could put a year on it, what year did you wake up from the cult?
Okay, well, I'm not very good with years, but let's say that it was around the X Factor time when it came out that I'd been having an affair, and that had been going on for a considerable amount of time, to be honest with you. But I would say I was probably disfellowshipped in 2011. I actually moved down to Macclesfield, and I spent about a year living with my now wife. And my ex-wife got in touch and said, after about a year, you need to come back to the truth. You need to come back to Jehovah. If you don't act quickly, I'm going to divorce you. She hadn't divorced me by this point. I'd been living in Macclesfield for a year, approximately. And I thought, oh, this was a bit of a jolt to me, because it was like, if I don't go back, basically, I'm never going to speak to my family ever again. It is the truth. I better do something. So that was a very stressful time as well. And I actually returned back to Bolton, but that didn't last very long, because I was in love with my wife. I hadn't remarried, but I was in love with my now wife, and I just couldn't go to the meetings as a disfellowship person, and that, I think that was when I started to properly look at YouTube videos and other things, and so then it quickly came up unravelled, and then I came back to Macclesfield, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. It feels...
But that was another crazy time. So around about the X Factor time, 2010, when it was discovered that I was having an affair, and that all came out, and then going through this fellowshipping process and visiting family and friends and saying I'm going to be disfellowshipped, and them being absolutely, distraught type of thing. Because although I growing up, we did have an uncle that had been disfellowshipped. He was disfellowshipped for around about maybe 10 years, actually. Maybe just a couple of years, I'm not sure. But he lives in a different country, so it never really affected us on the day-to-day basis. So I was sort of like the first one in my immediate family to not be a witness and to be disfellowshipped. When I told my eldest brother, or when he came around to see me, that I was going to be disfellowshipped, he was like, I'd much rather I'd found out you'd been killed. You died in an accident.
Wow. Is he still shunning you?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, it sounds like such a traumatic experience that you've been through. And, hopefully, at least understanding, at least being able to view the whole thing in context and get some perspective on things has been productive for your mental health. But what fascinates me, and it's the one thing we haven't spoken about yet, is that you sort of really went hard into XJW activism in a way, because you appeared in a film.
So it was the week of the school, and it was my turn to say the dinner time prayer. And the yoga he says, would you say the prayer?
We'll have to do it
immediately as I finished, he says,
I can't.
that was a bit short. Quick as a flash, I said to him, Jehovah listens to our prayers. He doesn't measure them. And the whole room laughed.
So how did all that come about?
Well, I was listening to a podcast that you were hosting. Do you remember mentioning this film? They were making a film in Manchester.
Yeah, we were doing JW podcast. So it was in the early days of my activism. We were doing a podcast called JW Podcast, and we probably mentioned, because I think Daniel Cockatello, the director, reached out to us and said that they were doing auditions. So we probably would have mentioned it in one of the shows. Oh, if you're in the Manchester area. I was actually thinking, damn it, I'm in Croatia. I'd really love to be involved in this, but I couldn't. But obviously you were in the area, so you went along to the auditions, did you?
Yeah, so I remember it vividly. I was window cleaning in Macclesfield. Having lived in Macclesfield, I joined up with Macclesfield Amateur Dramatic Society. And I've made a lot of friends in that. I'm window cleaning, I'm an ex-witness, and I'm sort of interested in the whole acting thing. You need some sort of outlet for your urge to be on a platform. And I'm listening to this podcast, and Lloyd Evans says that they're making a film in the Manchester area. They're looking for ex-witnesses. If you're interested in acting, that would sort of be a bonus as well. This is right up my street. So I got in touch. I remember sort of responding to whatever information you put out on the podcast straight away in the car whilst I was window cleaning. That's all you said about it. Someone's wanting to make a film. I thought it was going to be like a student project or whatever. Didn't hold out much hope for it, but I sent any information that they asked for. They sent me a little audition piece because they'd already sort of cast it and everything. A little audition piece, and it was like one word or something. Well, instead of that, because in order to do that audition piece, I'd have had to involve somebody else and recording it or whatever. Instead of doing that, I put a suit and tie on, and I introduced a meeting, good evening, brothers and sisters, welcome to the Kingdom Hall this evening. If you'd like to take out your songbooks and sing song number 38 entitled, Should We Be Making Films About the Witnesses? And it's based on this scripture, whatever. And I just recorded me doing a meeting part, and I sent it in, and Daniel saw it, and it would have resonated with him because it was just what we used to seeing as growing up as witnesses, because he was a witness. And so they called me along, and it was a really good experience because it was like a massive film lot where there were like different studios or whatever, and big catering trucks and coaches and people jetting off to different film sets or whatever. So it was kind of a big concern, much bigger than I anticipated. And I ended up on this coach, and we drove to this set, which was a working man's club in Oldham. We went through the doors into the back room, and they made it into a full-size Kingdom Hall. And I was blown away by this because it was just like walking into a Kingdom Hall. It was kind of a surreal moment. In fact, Daniel said, you've not seen the set yet, have you? And he sort of dragged me over, and he's like, look at this. I was the only ex-witness in the film.
Wow. Okay.
Set, to me,
so it meant something more to you. Yeah. It meant something more to you as an ex-witness, seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So that was a really good experience. He said to me, just when they were trying to sort of get time of like the main characters walking in and out, he says, "Can we just put you on the platform and you just talk like you say the type of things that you would hear at meetings or whatever?" So I was like, right, okay. So got myself in that mindset, and I'm making announcements like. We have the visit of our circuit overseer coming up this week, so if you'd like to make arrangements to maybe take him on your return visits, then speak to a brother, whatever. So the circuit overseer and his wife, brother and sister Stevenson, I threw that in. I put my own name to being a circuit overseer whilst I had the opportunity, and I'm making announcements like this from the platform.
And you appointed yourself as a circuit overseer. Okay, yeah.
I've lived, do you know what I mean? But some of those scenes actually made it into the film. I've been told that they wouldn't, so I thought I've got free rein here. I can have a laugh, but it resonated with Daniel, so he made sure it found its way into the film. So you can hear my voice, over the speakers or whatever. And I'm also included in a tiny little scene, which is the house party scene.
Well, and that's the one that we've just seen.
Say some sort of anecdote about your experience, like as a witness or whatever, and that was included in the film. And the anecdote that I used was when I went to pioneer school. Every day, a different brother would be assigned to give the dinner time prayer. You'd have been to pioneer school, wouldn't you, of course? So, my time for saying the dinner time prayer, I'm like, I didn't really like saying prayers, you know what I mean? It's not something that I was particularly into. But I came out with my standard prayer, dinner time prayer, nothing special. And the circuit overseer said afterwards, "You must be hungry, Luke," meaning that was a short prayer. And I said to him, Jehovah listens to our prayers. He doesn't measure them. And so when I told everyone back at home that I'd said this to the circuit overseer, they all laughed and thought it was funny and a good sort of comeback to what the circuit overseer had said. So this was the story that I was telling in this party scene, but all of the other extras weren't witnesses. So when I gave the story, they didn't realise that was quite a good put down to a circuit overseer, so it just didn't resonate with them at all. So
it drew
that story goes to
it drew on their acting skills to find it funny.
Or chuckles or anything.
Well, I think that must have been a really interesting experience being involved in apostasy as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and it sounds like as one of the few in the cast who was an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I've actually heard one or two complaining about the party scene, saying that's not realistic. You know, how would you have like Jehovah's Witnesses dancing in that way at a party? You know, but I remember that being a reality in my part of the world. In our part of England, you did have this weird kind of dynamic where even though everyone took it deadly seriously and you know, everyone was super judgmental with each other and super getting involved in each other's lives. For some reason, when it came to parties, it was anything goes almost, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think I share your viewpoint because the area where the film was set was our location. It was growing up as witnesses, and I think it was a fair portrayal of the kind of events that were held in our part of the world. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So thank you for representing Northern England so well in Apostasy. And viewers, if you haven't yet checked out Apostasy, I actually have a poster of the Apostasy film here in the bunker. I don't know whether you can see it on the other camera angle. But yeah, it's an amazing film by our good friend Daniel Cockatalo, who I've interviewed. Please do check it out if you can. Luke, it's been a real pleasure interviewing you, and more than just interviewing you, reconnecting with you. I hope it won't be too long until we can do so in person, COVID permitting.
That would be great.
So I guess what I'd like to do now in summary is ask you to convey your thoughts for anyone who might be watching. I'm thinking, frankly, specifically about friends and family who might still be Jehovah's Witnesses and who might be watching this video because they see the name Luke Stevenson on YouTube and they can't resist seeing what you've got to say about your story. You know, what would you like to say to any Jehovah's Witnesses who knew you as a Jehovah's Witness who might be shunning you?
I would say look, I'm here for you when you're ready. It makes much more sense to me now why witnesses are not allowed to speak to people who have either left the religion of their own free mind or have been disfellowshipped. It makes much more sense to me now because there is a reason why witnesses aren't allowed to speak to people who are no longer witnesses, and it's not the reasons as portrayed by the governing body. There's a lot more to life outside of the religion, and you need to free yourselves, really, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to express that to someone when they're inside. When you're in a cult, you don't think you're in a cult, do you?
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
The way I put it is, what do you really have to lose by investigating it? What do you really have to lose by subjecting your beliefs to scrutiny in the same way that you request people in the door-to-door work to subject their beliefs to scrutiny? Why don't you do that to your own religion,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Luke, I really appreciate you setting aside the time to go down memory lane. And I'm really glad that we've been able to reconnect. And again, I can't wait to see you in person and give you a big hug.
Yeah. Do we conclude in prayer now?
We don't do song and prayer at the end, although I know you have special skills in that, as you have special skills in singing. But all that remains is to remind viewers that you can watch similar videos to this by subscribing to the Lloyd Evans channel. But that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.